Hello and welcome to my video, which in case you haven't already guessed is a review for the latest Doctor Who episode, Revolution of the Daleks. A sequel to the previous Dalek episode Resolution, which sees the return of fan favourite Captain Jack Harkness and the exit of companions Ryan and Graham. Now before we get into this video, just a quick introduction. My name's Sam, or Samalan, and if you couldn't tell, this review thing's very brand new to me, but I'm an avid Doctor Who fan, so how hard could it be? But yeah, Doctor Who. I love this show. It's been my favourite since I was a kid. The Doctor, the TARDIS, monsters, travelling through space, the endless storytelling possibilities. I mean, what is there not to love? So with an episode featuring the return of one of my favourite Who characters, Captain Jack Harkness, and the return of my all-time favourite Who baddies, the Daleks, you'd think I'd be pretty excited, right? Yeah. Let's just say I'm less than satisfied with the state of Doctor Who at the moment. In my opinion, Doctor Who's been going gradually downhill since Series 6, so when head writer Stephen Moffat left, I was hoping for a fresher breath air, which we got, if that fresh air was a fart in a lift. Chris Chibnall, the current head writer, has turned this show from something used to be buzzed about seeing every Saturday night to something I feel a reluctant obligation to watch just in case it gets better. It's kind of like an abusive relationship you just can't tear yourself away from. I mean, the writing is awful, the companions are bland, the monsters are forgettable at best, and then there's the Doctor. The main character, the most unlikable incarnation I've ever seen. And don't even get me started on that timeless child bollocks. So when I sat down on New Year's Day to watch what I expected was going to be another terrible episode, I was pleasantly surprised. Why? Well, here we go. The episode starts off with a recap of the previous Dalek episode Resolution, which I wasn't a fan of, but that's for another day. The recap does its job, not much more to say. Then we cut to 367 minutes later. What was wrong with saying 6 hours? It's like those mothers when you ask how old their baby is and they're like, oh, he's 24 months years old. No, he's 2 years. Just say 2 fucking years. Also, what is with the colour and size of this text? It's like a Sainsbury's advert. Anyway, we're subjected to an awkwardly long shot of a man watching a forklift who has been tasked to transport the empty shell of the reconnaissance Dalek from the previous episode via lorry to some depository. He asks if he can stop for a cup of tea during his journey, despite being told this is deadly alien technology that has killed people and should be delivered quickly as possible. And despite this, he's given permission. And after some throwaway dialogue about his mum, T-Boy hits the road. On his way to the depository, this guy finishes tea and we get yet another reminder that this guy has a mum. He stops at the roadside to get a top up, takes a sip, realises he's been poisoned by the woman in the tea trailer before collapsing to the ground. His lifeless body is then bundled into the back of the lorry and the woman drives off with the remnants of the Dalek. Now then, this plan is fucking ridiculous. First of all, the people behind this plan would have to know this guy was going to stop at all, when the safe assumption is he wouldn't, given the cargo inside he's transporting. Secondly, they would have to know where he's going and which route he would take. Thirdly, they would have to know this guy just can't go 5 minutes without a cup of tea. Fourth, they would have to know that this guy would run out of tea on this part of his journey. Fifth, they had to know he would stop here. Sixth, they had to hope he would take a sip of his PG poison before resuming his journey. And seventh, they had to acquire all of this information and plan this entire stupidly complex plan in just the space of 6 hours. Oh no, sorry, I mean 367 minutes. So much had to be predicted correctly for this plan to work, and it's just so unbelievable. I mean, it's more of a leap of faith than anything organised cleverly. Oh, and it's also very convenient how no drivers passed by as this lifeless body is dragged along the ground and bundled into the back of the lorry in broad daylight. All of this, and we're not even 4 minutes in, but moving on. After the title sequence, we are introduced to new characters, Joe Patterson and Leo Ragazzi. Joe is the new UK Technology Secretary, and Leo is the CEO of some tech company bought by the one and only Jack Robertson, previously seen in that crappy episode about the mutant spiders. We are then treated to a little speech from Robertson about civil unrest, distrust in political leaders, and pressure on police enforcement. Very subtle. And Robertson's proposed solution to these problems emerges from the fog. The security drones designed by Leo, which look bloody cool, by the way. After only a single demonstration of what the drones can do, the tech sec rather hastily orders the production of the drones, and is revealed that she tipped Robertson off about the Dalek armour in transit, which he acquired for Leo to base his drones off of. Now, this is all well and good, but surely something like this is already possible with today's technology without the need of reverse engineering a Dalek. We already have unmanned military drones. Hell, we've even got robots that deliver our food for us. Just stick a water cannon on a few of those and boom, national security. But whatever. We then cut to 79 billion light years away, where we see the Doctor for the first time after she was arrested by the Jadoon and taken to space jail in the previous episode. Quite some time has clearly passed since we last saw her, and how do we know this? Cliche tally marks on the walls. We get a taste of the repetitive routine the Doctor has been forced to live out daily, leading to this scene of her interacting with some fellow inmates. We get to see some of the creatures in question, and while it does a pretty good job of showing us how alien and terrifying this prison truly is, it does raise some questions. For example, this weeping angel here. How the hell were they able to capture and imprison this thing? It's also able to move whilst the Doctor is looking straight at it. What's up with that? It's then when the Doctor comes to have a chat with the ting, that the geography of the prison itself becomes confusing. In this first establishing shot, we can see the ting is sharing the same cell with the Doctor, but they're clearly separated when we get to this bit. Also, she strolled into her cell from what looked like the edge of the room, but here she is surrounded by loads of people. Did she have to cut through the other cells to get to hers? Trust me, I spent like 20 minutes looking at this shot and I just couldn't comprehend it. What I did like about the prison though was the design. I like the idea of the artificial architecture built into the meteorite itself. I was not a fan of these cages though. In real life you see them on like every building site, so they just look so cheap here. And it's all well and good putting VFX over them to make them look electrified, but when you're going to have characters touching them to no effect, then you're just wasting your time, aren't you? Anyway, we then cut to present day, over a year ago since the encounter with the reconnaissance Dalek. Ryan and Graham are back, or as I like to call them, plank of wood and comic relief. They approach what is seemingly an ordinary house, but it's actually the TARDIS the companions escaped certain doom with the previous episode. The two enter the TARDIS to reveal Yaz, who has been staying in the TARDIS day and night to try and figure out a way to find the Doctor or something. Plank of Wood then discloses very nicely for the audience the last time they saw the Doctor was 10 months ago. So that means Yaz has spent 10 months in this TARDIS trying to desperately get the Doctor back when she has a family and a job as a police officer? We had a whole episode in the previous series shoehorning Yaz's origin story in of why she wanted to become a police officer in the first place, only for this scene to take a massive shit on it. This just makes her character look clingy and tragic to me when she should have so much more going on for her. Even Ryan and Graham talk sense as they try to suggest for her to move on. But moving on from that rant, Graham shows Yaz footage of the security drone demonstration taken over a year ago, and somehow this has only just been leaked. Robertson is also captured in this footage, so the gang have their mission. Next up, Robertson is confronted by the fam. Sorry, I can't say that word without vomiting. Now, where was I? Oh yes, they confront Robertson after somehow knowing exactly where he was going to be, never explained, and Robertson's reaction to seeing them again was pretty much mine when I saw them on the poster for this episode.
Oh no, not you guys.
And after some pretty terrible acting and a pathetic attempt to look intimidating, security arrive who are awful at their jobs given how late they are to save the day. Like seriously, if they wanted to, these guys could have just stabbed Robertson and run away before security even knew what happened. The three are then escorted off the premises and we get this wonderful line of dialogue.
If we had the Doctor's psychic paper or we knew how to work that TARDIS, we could get into his office and see what's going on.
Yeah, but we don't, so we're gonna have to try and figure out another way.
Thanks, you two. Couldn't have figured that without you. Anyway, back to the prison, where the Doctor's having the time of her life. And then, Captain Jack appears! Hooray! We get a nice little reunion between the two, and then Jack initiates his plan to break the Doctor out of prison. After running down some corridors in a giant hamster ball, they arrive in Jack's cell and grab his vortex manipulator. We get a nice little joke about how he smuggled it in, up the bum, but unfortunately to the expense of some believability here. Surely a super advanced alien prison like this one would have x-rays when searching new prisoners. I don't care how far that thing was up inside you, mate, but Jadoon with rubber gloves is gonna find it. Anyway, they teleport away and the Doctor is free from prison after just 18 minutes. I mean, if it was gonna be this easy for them to escape and barely impact the plot any further, it does make you wonder why the writers bothered throwing her in prison in the first place. In breaking news, the Tech Sec has been elected the new Prime Minister, and the production of the security drones is underway. This is when Leo reveals to Robertson that he's been growing a Dalek creature from cellular traces found in the original casing. And for some reason he gave it access to that company's systems to prove it was intelligent, I suppose. Good one, Leo. Rightfully repulsed, Robertson orders the incineration of this creature, and as you can probably guess, this doesn't go to plan. Leo takes an awfully long time to destroy the creature, giving it plenty of time to escape and take over his body. I guess he never considered that this creature might want to live long enough to see England win the cup again someday. We then get this bit where Leo calls who we presume is his partner to tell them that he's not going to be home that night. Now I get this is the Dalek covering its tracks, I suppose, but honestly, why would it bother? It's a Dalek. And why does it smile when it repeats the words love you like it's mocking them? Isn't the whole point of a Dalek that it doesn't have emotions other than hate? We're then brought back to Jack and the Doctor, who teleport into the TARDIS, because I guess anyone can nowadays. Oh yeah, the Doctor's been in prison for decades, by the way. Doesn't feel that way, does it? I mean, the least they could have done is shown her trying to escape at least once. You know, the Doctor, the man who punched through a wall of diamond and died billions of times in an infinite loop until he broke through, that's Doctor. But nah, she just mopes around and accepts it. Anyway, she boots up the TARDIS before saying, "Find me my fam." So off they go to Earth, where we're treated to these cringy slow motion shots of the gang looking all happy as the TARDIS materialises in front of them. Jack greets Graham as Silver Fox and his reaction is genuinely quite funny. Yaz then shoves the Doctor out of nowhere in a forced attempt to inject some drama into the scene. The Doctor is then informed that it's been 10 months since they all last saw her and that there's Daleks on Earth. We then jump to Osaka in Japan. Seriously though, do you see what I mean by Sainsbury's? And somehow Leo's managed to get there, meaning he got through airport security and boarded a plane with a stupid squid attached to his back and no one gave a fuck. Sure, okay. He enters some facility where a Dalek clone farm has been built. It's never explained how long this took or when construction began, but more on that later. Back in the TARDIS, the Doctor is in some disbelief that it was a Dalek they saw in the mobile phone footage. So Yaz suggests scanning the planet for Dalek DNA, to which Jack replies, "Oh, she's good." And I shit you not, right, as quick as a whip, Ryan replies with, "Yeah, we all are." In fact, just watch it for yourself, it's golden.
Scan for Dalek DNA trace across the planet.
Oh, she's good. Yeah, we all are.
This just makes him look so insecure and pretty arrogant for someone who can't even handle more than one facial expression. And the way Jack looks at him afterwards is great too. But I'm not done yet. How did Yaz's suggestion to scan the Earth for Dalek DNA merit a, "Oh, she's good"? It's the equivalent of someone offering to ring your mobile phone when you've misplaced it. Stop pretending these characters are useful. Anyway, they locate the Dalek DNA in Osaka, so the team split up, dropping Captain Jack and Yaz to investigate there, whilst the Doctor, Graham and Plank of Wood go and confront Robertson. And after no persuasion attempt whatsoever, he shows them the drone production line and insists he knows nothing about the facility in Osaka after being questioned about it. Then in Osaka, we get this chat between Jack and Yaz, and for the most part, it's quite nice. They discuss their experiences with the Doctor and fill us in on Jack's thoughts after the last time they saw each other, unsure if they would ever meet again or if he was even alive. But then Yaz ruins the scene by blaming the Doctor for basically ever getting involved in her life and showing her the universe because inevitably one day it will end. This is such a childish way of thinking and it makes her character even more unlikable for me. And to think we've got another whole series of her, oh boy. Jack and Yaz then break into the Osaka facility with the old favourite squareness gun, and then...
Thanks.
Thanks?
Are you feeling insecure? Because you seem to need a lot of praise.
Like, since she's met him, whenever has he demanded praise? If anything, Ryan rightfully deserved this comment earlier. Anyway, they're in and they discover the Dalek clone farm. We then cut to the new Prime Minister addressing the nation as the news cameras slowly zoom in for dramatic effect, before cutting back to the Doctor and the others making their way to Osaka. Robertson reacts humorously to the TARDIS being bigger on the inside, and I have to say I genuinely quite enjoy his character in this episode. I know he's just a Trump caricature, but he is genuinely more entertaining to me than the main cast. Then back to the PM as this obnoxiously cheesy music swells up over a speech. I guess they were trying to go for something inspirational and mighty and, dare I say, patriotic, but it honestly just comes off as comedic. The drones are then officially introduced to the public. We see some shots of the drones being used at airports and national tourist spots, but I thought they've just been unveiled. How are they here, there and everywhere already? Then back to the TARDIS, the Doctor tells Plank of Wood they'll arrive at Osaka in 4 minutes. Hang on. 4 minutes? You can hop between centuries and other ends of the universe in seconds, but it takes 4 minutes to get to another part of the planet you're already on. This all makes sense though when the two sit down to have a little chat about the Doctor's absence and the events of the Timeless Children. I guess Chibnall just didn't know how to put this scene in fluidly without making the TARDIS look like a piece of shit. Now, I do appreciate what they tried to do with this scene. From what I remember, we rarely got any sort of one-on-one interaction with the Doctor and Ryan, so it's nice to see them attempt this. However, after 2 whole series of these two travelling frozen through time and space together. There's just no chemistry here. When they talk, you don't get the impression that they've known each other for that long. And yes, I know he hasn't seen her for 10 months, blah blah blah. But if anything, this absence should be an emotional driving force for this scene. But it's not, and neither's what the Doctor's got to say about who she thought she was. So that might just be because I hate the timeless children. Thanks, Chibnall. And of course this guy's acting doesn't help. If you want proof, just have a look at this bit because it's outstanding.
I wasn't born on Gallifrey. Where I'm from, all the lives I've lived, some of that has been hidden from me and I don't even know how much.
Seriously?
Now look, so far I've been pretty negative about this episode, but it's this last half hour where I really start enjoying things. So let's move on. So the gang in the TARDIS arrives to the facility in Osaka and join Jack and Yaz, who seem to have abandoned their plan of blowing the place up. Oh yeah, there was a whole scene where they were rigging the place up with explosives and then some Dalek mutants attack them, but I just completely forgot about that, to be honest. The Dalek controlling Leo then reveals itself, somehow able to mute its footsteps until halfway down these metal stairs. The Dalek then tells us how it located this building, hired workers, and paid for everything to build this clone farm, using the systems it was given access to by Leo earlier. This is where things get confusing once again. The very longest amount of time the Dalek had to do this was just over a year, which is still a bit of a stretch given the size of this operation, and we are never actually told when Leo cloned this original Dalek. So for all we know, this could just be 2 days work. This idea is fine and everything, but I could have done with a bit more clarity concerning the whens and the hows. Anyway, whilst going through its master plan, the Dalek has inquired about the fate of the workers it hired, to which it reveals that they were liquidized and used to feed the growing Dalek clones. Another idea I quite enjoyed because it's so grisly and it just shows how disgusting and horrific the Daleks are. Yaz then brings up the mood lighting in the room, which has been slowly changing from green to purple, and the Doctor realises it's ultraviolet light, and the Daleks can use this to transport themselves to their new casings, which have also been redesigned to have built-in Dalek weaponry. So this recent thing of ultraviolet light being some sort of super serum to the Daleks is just another thing I don't like. In resolution, it was never explained how it can not only resurrect a Dalek, but also bring its 3 severed and scattered body parts together. And in this episode, they can apparently just use it to teleport anywhere they like. I mean, if there was any sort of explanation to how ultraviolet light gives Daleks these abilities, I'd be happier, but there's none. No, sorry, just too convenient. We then get a cool shot of the Dalek mutants plugging themselves into their new bodies and coming to life. Now with limited edition red mood lighting. Now, jokes aside, I thought these guys looked cool with the blue lights, but with the red lights, oh my god, they look awesome. We then get a sequence of the Daleks coming to life over the country and doing what they do best, killing people. Although it does make me laugh how this armed guard just watched this Dalek zap someone and then just shouts, "Stay there!" Mate, you just saw that woman's skeleton, open fire! Then the way this bloke came forward to this Dalek like he was going to shank her with his bayonet. The PM then tries to address the nation about the technical issues with the drones, somehow not noticing the Daleks surrounding her until one of them speaks. She's then exterminated before we get this great shot and cut back to the Doctor and her crew. The Dalek then disposes of Leo and they head back to the TARDIS, where the Doctor pitches a plan to save the human race by bringing in more Daleks. Now, as questionable as this decision is, this is where my excitement started bubbling. The Doctor sends out the original reconnaissance Dalek signal to lure in a ship of Death Squad Daleks to Earth, who according to Jack are way more brutal and according to the Doctor act as enforcers of the Dalek race. And when Graham rightfully raises his concern that this will just kill more people, the Doctor says they won't because they don't care about humans. I thought all Daleks hated anything different from them, so I couldn't imagine these guys being not too fussed about it, but whatever. The Death Squad Daleks receive the signal and head to Earth. We get another sequence of the new Daleks killing people, then we see the Death Squad Dalek ship coming in, where they have detected rogue Dalek DNA, which comes from the fact they've been grown using human remains, therefore showing off human traces in their DNA, and therefore appearing as impure, which the Death Squad Daleks are not happy about. They all set out to destroy the rogue Daleks. But if these Daleks have only just detected the rogue DNA as they entered the city skyline, surely that means they followed the signal to Earth because it's a potential planet to conquer, meaning they did intentionally come here to kill humans? So the Doctor sort of lied, didn't she? I don't know. But anyway, Dalek Civil War. This shot gave me goosebumps. The TARDIS lands on top of this bridge and the Doctor and only Robertson for some reason step out to watch the battle unfold. The two sides of Daleks and exchange some sick burns and open fire. Unfortunately though, this is all we get of this cleansing war, restricted to just one battle on a bridge. Just feels a shame given the 40-minute lead up to this point. Robertson then makes a decision to side with the pure Daleks for
No real reason, but honestly it's totally believable in his character anyway, so fine. Then after barely trying to stop him, the Doctor fucks off. Robertson then offers himself to the Daleks, promising them information if he is brought to their leader. I mean, like I said, I can totally believe his character would do something like this, but he essentially convinces the Daleks that taking over Earth would be a benefit to them, and honestly, why would you need to convince a Dalek that? So back to the Doctor, who essentially just left Robertson to die. She's prepping to launch phase 2 of her plan, which is to destroy the Death Squad Daleks. She orders Jack to board the ship to blow it up, and Ryan and Graham offer to go as well. Understandably, Jack is like, why? Because seriously, what the hell are these two meant to do? But the Doctor seems pretty eager to send them to their deaths, responding with,
I couldn't stop them even if I wanted to.
well, as Jack is the only one with a vortex manipulator, I'm sure you could. So the three teleport onto the ship and split up to begin planting bombs. Then Graham delivers this cringe.
No alien ship is safe from us two bad boys.
Stop talking weird, Graham.
I think this is the first time I've ever appreciated Ryan's response to anything. You 100% deserve that. Throughout this scene though, we get some nice camera work as we follow the gang around. And the design of the ship is pretty great too. Jack then bumps into Robertson, who has been brought on board by the Daleks to meet their leader. Now I wish they did something different with the design of the leader Dalek, just to make it look a bit more unique amongst the rest of them. But I also wish they did something different with these Daleks in general. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're my favourite Dalek design. But earlier, Jack described these fellows as more brutal than your standard Dalek. And to be honest, they don't really live up to that. I guess what Jack meant by this is that these Daleks go around and destroy any Dalek that isn't genetically pure. But this isn't really new to Dalek nature. Do you remember the new paradigm Daleks killing the impure ones? So if they are going to introduce this concept of a squadron of Daleks going around and keeping the Dalek race pure, supposedly being more brutal than their standard kind, I would have appreciated some modification to their casing to reflect this. And to be honest, putting a metal claw instead of a sucker arm is not modification. I really hope this is not Chibnall trying to replace the iconic plunger arm of death. You've already done enough, Chibnall, please don't make me find you. Anyway, Robertson rats out the Doctor to the Daleks, telling them she was behind the reconnaissance signal that summoned them to Earth. Jack overhears everything, and the original clone of the reconnaissance scout teleports on board, the last surviving impurity. The survivor tries to make the suggestion it can be restored to full purity, and the others are like, nah, and exterminate him. For some reason though, this is where Robertson's like, oh, actually, these guys are pretty fucked up. Despite being on the bridge earlier watching them destroy themselves, but whatever. Ryan and Graham then reunite with Jack and relay the information to the Doctor, who begins a new plan to rid the Earth of the Death Squad Daleks. Then the Doctor's like, oh, trust me, Yaz, when have I ever let you down? Then Yaz stares at her like her disappearing was her fault. Like she saved your life and went to prison. Just grow up, you unbearable whinging child. Back on the Dalek ship, Jack and the other two find Robertson and oh my god, how did it miss? This must be the most incompetent Dalek ever. In the Doctor's own words, these Daleks are meant to be the equivalent to the SAS. And these guys weren't even a moving target. How did it fucking miss? This is what happens when you lie on your CV and still get the job. But my frustration was quickly extinguished when we got to this shot. Just look how beautiful this is. A massive shout out to the VFX team, because this is just gorgeous. And look at the Daleks. They look great. I've always remembered CGI Daleks in the past looking pretty naff, so this is just a delight to see. The Doctor was surprisingly quite enjoyable in this little bit as well. The way she mocks the Daleks and lures them into the TARDIS, which again, just look how sick this looks. We then cut back to the others on the ship, who are currently being surrounded by Daleks. Jack then tells the Daleks his name and that he's immortal, for no real reason other than it'll look cool in the trailer. They teleport to safety and set off the charges as they do, blowing up the Dalek ship. Let's just hope the fiery debris doesn't kill too many civilians as it crashes down over the city. Then back in the TARDIS, we see the remainder of the Daleks packed inside. But as you can see, something's up. The Doctor then appears as a hologram and explains to the audience, the Daleks, that this is not her TARDIS and she's programmed as destruction, killing all the Daleks inside. Now, a couple of things bug me about this. First up, this is not the same interior we see in this shot. So did the Doctor also use a hologram to mimic the interior of her own TARDIS? And if she did, what would be the point? As far as I know, these Daleks would have no idea what the inside of her TARDIS looks like. And if they do, why would they even care? They would still just bundle in after her. Second up, why is the Doctor's hologram now much worse quality here? Also strange how her hologram is reacting so realistically to the wind here, even capable of interacting with doors. Okay, I'm probably looking too much into this. But thirdly, I thought TARDISes were sentient. Like, she's basically sacrificing a living being here. And by the way she's acting, there's seemingly no consequence to her actions on her conscience.
Some emotional impact on the Doctor would have been appreciated by me, rather than treating this spare TARDIS like an expendable machine. Especially now that Gallifrey is dead again and this TARDIS is one of the only remnants of our home left in existence. But honestly, I'm just glad the Doctor managed to put an end to this threat without whipping out her sonic screwdriver again. In fact, she doesn't even use the screwdriver once in this episode. It's nice to see some resourcefulness for once. I love the screwdriver, but it gets used too much. Anyway, TARDIS folds in on itself, Daleks die, Doctor saves the day. Though it's slightly convenient that every single Dalek that poured out of this ship decided to bundle into this one. Everyone celebrates and Robertson somehow then worms his way out of trouble for not only betraying the Doctor, but the human race too. Like, I'm not joking, he gets off so easily. Oh well, it was fun to have at least. Back in the TARDIS, Jack says his farewells via speakerphone, and considering we didn't get any emotional goodbye from him in person, I'm assuming that means he'll be back in the near future. The gang are all ready to set off, but Ryan pipes up and says he's not coming with them. His reason being his friends need him and his planet does too. Nah mate, we got enough trees. Get it? Because he's wooden. The Doctor then asks the other two if they'll stay, and of course Yaz says yes in a heartbeat like the clingy puppy she is. I mean, that was a bit of a leap. Earlier she was like, but if I stay you'll just abandon me again. And then here she's like,
I'll never leave you, Doctor.
But then Graham reveals he too is also leaving, wanting to continue having adventures in space and time before Ryan said he was departing and decided he'd rather be around to watch him grow as a person. The four hug for a final time, the Doctor giving out one last
Bye, fam.
God, I hope that's the last time I ever hear that word. And quickly before they leave, the Doctor gives them a psychic paper each, claiming they might come in handy, essentially giving them power to break into anywhere they like. 'Cause fam! Nope, still can't do it. Overall, this scene is fine, I guess, but as I'm not the hugest fans of these two anyway, I just can't pretend to feel anything for it. Though if she left too, I would be happier. We then get one final scene, with Graham teaching Ryan how to ride a bike. Remember Ryan's got dyspraxia? Don't worry, neither did the writers. This all takes place on top of the hill where we first meet these characters 2 series ago. They talk about how there's some reports of aliens and how they could investigate using their psychic paper, but let's be real here, what the hell are they going to do? Then as Ryan gets back on his bike for another go, oh God. A vision of his dead grandmother comes to visit him. I think my eyes rolled into the back of my skull both times I watched this. It is so cringy. I mean, what is this? Star Wars? The vision then disappears and the two put it down to the sun being in their eyes, despite the sun being directly above them. We then get a lovely shot zooming out on the English countryside as Ryan stacks it. Wahey! This scene definitely could have done without that stupid Grace ghost, but despite that, it was a nice way to send these characters off. And that's coming from someone who doesn't even like them. Ending the story where it first began and bringing the episode to a close. Oh, and John Bishop is the next companion, but that's for another day. So, that was Revolution of the Daleks. Now, what did I think of it overall? Well, as you could probably tell, I was not a fan of the first 40 minutes. The Doctor being imprisoned was pointless. Nothing really happened with Graham, Ryan or Yaz when left to their own devices. There were plenty of nonsensical moments, and generally, I just found little to enjoy from it. The companions were worse than ever in this episode. Graham was cringe, Ryan was boring, and Yaz was irritating. Like, really irritating. Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, whilst not as annoying as I usually find her, still wasn't anything too special. The side casts were fine, but when we got to the last half hour, things got so much better for me. I loved the Daleks in this episode. From the moment these guys were activated, they just stole the screen. My main gripe is that this segment is way too brief, especially when there was the potential of having an all-out Dalek civil war. It just feels like a wasted opportunity for me, but there were some great concepts thrown in here and there. I loved the idea of the Death Squad Daleks, the scenes of Dalek drones going around wreaking havoc, the reconnaissance Dalek's plan, and the way the Doctor dealt with it was surprisingly ingenious too, if you forget the TARDIS slaughter. And of course, Nicholas Briggs knocks it out of the park as the voice of the Daleks once again. Honestly, it was the way the Daleks were used in this episode that saved it for me. In terms of production values, yeah, there were some beautiful shots here and there. The set design was good, the CGI was great, and overall there's nothing negative I can really say about it. But the writing though, there were some awful lines of dialogue. The story though, whilst nothing spectacular, I enjoyed it. It does require you to stretch your beliefs somewhat as there's some pretty nonsensical elements in this story, but overall it's a good follow-up to Resolution. Finally, the acting. Nothing great, as usual, but Nothing downright terrible, except for Planky, of course.
Seriously?
And yeah, to sum it all up, it was a decent episode. Much better than I thought it was going to be. Still riddled with flaws, but I enjoyed the ride. But as you've probably noticed, one element still remains undiscussed. Arguably one of the most highly anticipated comebacks in New Who, Captain Jack Harkness. So, what did I think of him in this episode? He was there, I guess. Look, before I go any further, Captain Jack is one of my favourite characters in the show, so of course after 11 years I was excited to see him return. But really, when you think about it, apart from releasing the Doctor from space jail, what did he do? He was more or less just running errands with the rest of the companions, and he never felt like he was part of the episode. He didn't feel like fan service as such, like his brief cameo in Fugitive of the Jadoon, but he still didn't feel like he needed to be there, which is a shame because Captain Jack is such a well-loved element of the revived series, and he deserves better. Now, this isn't the actor's fault. John Barrowman does a fantastic job jumping straight back into the character of Captain Jack. I think the problem is one that this whole era of Doctor Who suffers from already. Too many companions. We have the Doctor, we have Ryan, we have Graham, we have Yaz, and then in this episode, we get the addition of 2 Jacks. With so many main characters, inevitably some are going to get pushed to the side. And I do feel like this happened to Jack. I think if we just had more screen time dedicated to the Doctor and Jack together, it would have fixed this issue. And that's what I'm hoping for next series, because I would love to see some chemistry between those two. The only other little thing I have to say is that despite the Doctor regenerating twice since her and Jack last met, they seem to hit it off straight away. Because we don't really get any sort of a catch-up scene in this episode. It's more or less just, I've saved you and now let's go defeat the Daleks. Just more development into their relationship, I'd be happy. Anyway, that is my review for Revolution of the Daleks. I hope you enjoyed it. I do plan to upload more reviews in the future, not just Doctor Who, whatever I've been watching. And I do want to make some other content too, maybe some ranking videos or just whatever I feel like doing. And if any of you kind viewers would like to see that sort of thing, then please leave a like and subscribe for more. And also let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Samalan out.